Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In the past, we checked out a couple of products from Divoom, which I thought were pretty cool desk decor gadgets, including more recently their Ditto, which is this retro computer-styled speaker with a pixel art display up top, also allowing you to play back some interactive mini-games while acting as a Bluetooth speaker. And they also released this year the Time Skate, which is a kind of Nixie Tube-inspired clock that has small LCD screens that can show off different animations. Kind of like a smartwatch, you're able to customize each of the different dials with various widgets and commands, and it's able to connect to the internet to refresh the data for things like weather as well as stock information automatically. Today we're taking a look at another product from them, which is kind of a hybrid of these two models. It's called the Tiivoo-2. It's once again packaged in a pretty adorable way, and this one is modeled off of a retro TV with a 5-watt driver or speaker, which can be customized with various animations, images, and also mini games that you can push over. But compared to the, again, Divoom Ditto, it's going to be a little bit smaller. As you can tell here, it's more in line with the single panel found on the Time Skate. So this one is going to take up even less desk space and continues with the retro design that we'll take a closer look at in a moment. Underneath the packaging here, you'll also find some stickers that you can use to further decorate the shell on the Tiivoo-2, as well as a standard USB Type-C charging cable. Last but not least, you'll also find just a quick user guide at the very bottom. And so taking a closer look at the design of the Tiivoo, again, this thing is actually quite small next to a smartphone, for instance. It's kind of similar to one of those clip-on, maybe sports-style JBL speakers from a dimension point of view. Speaker grills on the very top, as well as the extendable antenna for the FM radio capability on the back that you can also collapse if not being used. There is a simple Type-C port here for power, a micro SD card slot for reading back files or music stored directly onto a memory card, which is neat, passive radiator for bass, as well as some soft touch feet that prevents it from sliding around. All the controls are on the front, and they correspond to kind of volume controls, as well as a power key / menu key, and there's also going to be a 4-way navigation toggle that you can also navigate around, similar to on a retro Game Boy. If we look really closely, Divoom have also added a kind of shiny layer or texture beneath the plastic acrylic plate to resemble maybe circuitry, giving it a slightly more cyberpunk appearance. Otherwise, our model is in green, but it also comes in a pink as well as yellow version, and the retail MRSP I do think is a little bit on the higher side, $86, but luckily you can often find discounts and coupons available, like one here for the holiday season that seems to then add an additional 40% off, putting it closer to around $50, which is more reasonable, I think. So the product page describes this as retro design meets modern tech, inspired by 90s products including TVs as well as radios. Most of the functionality from the Ditto series have been replicated on here, meaning you can also connect it to your smartphone using the Divoom companion app for pushing over additional customizable watch faces, as well as play back some retro-style games as well, in addition to the built-in FM radio function, which is going to be new to this particular model. Other features include pomodoro countdown timers, as well as a white noise sound machine to help you relax and unwind, fall asleep a little bit faster. Divoom claims there is enough built-in storage to hold up to 100 clock faces at a time when you are pushing it over. You can even pre-store the photos again on the built-in memory if you're gifting this to an elderly or someone to make it more personalized with your images right out of the box, which is pretty interesting. And a couple of final top-line specs include a 3000 mAh capacity battery that's rated for around 8 hours of continuous music and usage before you have to recharge it again. Tops up in under 2 hours, which is not bad. And also, technically, there's a 40mm driver inside. The entire thing here, by the way, weighs around 1 pound, give and take. Pretty light. Sliding it into a backpack is also not going to be too problematic if you're folding the antenna down. So we can start off here with some of the different languages you're able to select using the, again, D-pad. We'll check out the app in a moment, but by default you're able to find a handful of customizable watch dials. This first one here is kind of in a robotic or cyberpunk style, looking pretty decent. It is an IPS LCD screen, so viewing angles are good enough, I would say, even if it's not fully laminated. So there can be a little bit of glare at times, but if you're using it mostly indoors, it shouldn't be that problematic. Now we can also use the dial here to switch into some of the other custom watch faces, including a slightly more modern design here. This one is a flip style clock. Another one which is a bit more analog and also playful. This one inspired by Nixie tubes. And we can go into another one here which is inspired by this almost Casio glow light, which is also pretty neat. Here's another artistic grid style with more moving animations and GIFs that will loop through by itself automatically, including some Pokemon characters, quite cute. And another one here which is in a digital format before going into a pixel art loop, which can hold various pieces of artwork that will then randomize and shuffle back and forth. So you can just have it act as a pretty cool desk piece and just, if you're bored, kind of zone out for a moment just by staring at the various artwork. By the way, similar to their other products, because they have that app, there is a community support behind it where other members have created various digital artwork and share it on the app, allowing you to download and also push it over to your device, taking inspiration as well as creating your own and sharing yourself. So kind of acting like a social forum in that way. So you get the idea. The kind of loop here definitely shows off a very playful nature as you have it on your desk, and still technically showing the time information as well as the date on the side slivers here as kind of a widget display. And then again, looping into some more animations before we finally go over to the first one that we saw there towards the beginning. I can press on the D-pad here once to also go into the main menu carousel, so we can loop through a few different features, including one here for music playback. The next one is going to take us into the radio functionality. Now there is no AM radio, it's only FM, but that's kind of the norm for many of these products these days. In addition to going through the different watch faces that we saw there from earlier, you can also go into a more specific one, finding the name and then selecting it from the list instead. This one here, by the way, acts as a back key. And continuing onwards, let's take a quick look here at more advanced settings. You can change the screen brightness. This is already at the maximum, but you can also make it dimmer if you are in a darker space, turning it completely off as well to consume even less power. Change the volume level, which you can also do using the dial anywhere you are in the UI, so that can remain accessible regardless of what widget you are in, as well as change the units, turn on and off Bluetooth, as well as change some of the lock screen and time and date settings. And you can also find access to a scheduled power function, so it can turn on and off at certain times of the day automatically, maybe if you are waking up, so at nighttime it can turn off to consume even less power. This will then loop back into the main carousel or widget there. So let's go into some of the applications here, starting off with music. You can use Bluetooth connectivity or a micro SD card, as well as USB audio mode as well. So if you have a USB Type-C to Type-C or Type-C to 3.5mm jack, that can be a way of using wired connectivity, even though there is no 3.5mm jack built directly onto the Tiivoo. And now we are paired to the Tiivoo-2 audio, and we're going to go ahead and play back an audio demo here, cranking up the volume. Alright, so turning the volume down there. Takeaway is the sound quality is actually not bad, particularly for a speaker that is so small. It's still going to be more powerful in terms of the bass compared to any speaker built directly onto a phone, tablet, or most computers, because it is, of course, a much larger driver versus those thinner, lighter devices. So you get a bit more impact and kick. For something of its size, I think the volume output is actually not bad. It can fill up a car as well as a small space, including a desk area in an office or bedroom, certainly without too many problems. And the controls here feel responsive enough. You're also able to play and pause the track. It is using a Bluetooth 5 chip, so it offers decent enough latency and connectivity for things like YouTube and casual video consumption on Netflix. It's actually still pretty responsive, although it is technically using just standard Bluetooth codecs of SBC and AAC, and honestly not a huge difference in volume output as well as overall performance compared to the larger Ditto. Actually has a similar overall, I think, speaker quality to it. So this is certainly not bad, and also performs, I think, right in line with one of their other retro speaker type products, which was the Fairy speaker. Once again, this is another product from them that is styled after a retro, maybe radio or speaker of yesteryear, but this one has no screen at all. Everything here is completely mechanical and has a wireless microphone function that you can use for karaoke. But as you can tell here, dimensions as well as overall sound, I would say, are about the same across these two models. FM radio, for the most part, also worked quite well from the perspective of reception, even in more rural locations, thanks to the larger extendable antenna compared to most integrated designs. I was able to find a pretty good selection of music as well as news channels nearby. You can also favorite certain channels, as well as take a closer look at a full list, in addition to a manual search here that will go through and pick up the strongest channels in the region. And so the backplate region here doesn't glow in the dark or light up in a more dramatic way, unlike perhaps the Ditto here that has all the keys underneath the keyboard lighting up, as well as on the time skate that has accent lights on the edges. However, there is still an RGB light underneath the four-way navigation toggle that adds a subtle glow. Again, maybe it's not quite as dramatic as these two larger models, which are also a bit more expensive, but nonetheless still a fun touch. And now it has picked up all the different channels in the area, as you can tell here one at a time, that we can scroll through. The animations are actually done pretty well. They feel pretty smooth as you're swiping down the list, and you get a bit of kinetic scrolling as well if you are going really fast, that then slows down in time. Of course, it's not a touchscreen like these two other models as well, but overall, it still is responsive enough to use. Checking out the Photo tab here next, we have some sample images loaded in, and you can tell that technically it is an IPS LCD screen, similar to the Divoom Timeskate, that's capable of showing off slightly higher res images compared to the Ditto series, which are literally pixels. This offers a little bit higher PPI, similar to on a phone screen. It's just trying to imitate that more rough pixelated appearance when it's showing off some of the watch faces. It's all done using the software. But on the Photos app, you do get a little bit more of that higher resolution, although of course the screen size compared to a phone these days is still laughably small, but really takes me back to the 2000s when MP3, MP4 players and tiny pocket TVs actually existed and had screens of a similar size like this. But this serves as an example. You can also push over other files of your choice, family members, pets, things like that, over to that particular widget. Now here is the Pomodoro countdown timer. You can set up different intervals to maximize your efficiency. You can set those up and give yourself some breaks as you are working on various tasks. Alarm clock is quite simple and self-explanatory, but when it comes to tool, we're able to find the additional games on here. So there's one called Orchard Spin, basically become a version of a casino game, and you have to see if eventually it will stop onto the same icon and then you'll win, versus if they're not aligned, of course you get a lower score. And this is a random dice that will be kind of generating there in the background until it ends up on a certain number that you can then use if you're playing certain board games, a random dice generator basically. Next one here is going to be also a magic 8-ball, also quite fun. You're able to ask a question and then see what the response will be later on that gets randomly generated. Next one here is called Brick Ricochet, which is basically a version of Brick Breaker that you're able to navigate using, again, the D-pad and try to, again, eliminate all the bricks with the bouncing kind of Pong here. And it's a very classic game, but also is, I have to say, replicated quite well using the LCD screen with that kind of pixelated nature on purpose. You even get a offshoot version of Flappy Bird on here as well. Goal here is to press on the button here to make the bird fly a little bit higher for it to jump over all the columns, as you can tell there. Now, some of the animations are a little bit more janky or slightly more sluggish, as you can tell there, probably because the processor inside isn't going to be as fast as on a phone or tablet that we are used to, but still it's mostly playable, and it's kind of a fun little mini game baked into this speaker/alarm clock device. Next function here is going to be also Snake, a very classic game also built on N, taking advantage of the four-way navigation toggle. Now on Snake, it looks like the animations might be a little bit on the fast side, so that's the part where some of the game, maybe graphics, are not going to be quite as perfect as on some of the legacy gaming consoles when it comes to getting the correct speed. But all in all, it still is playable, and the controls feel decent when it comes to the overall responsiveness. Also got a version of a racing game called Pixel Racing, using some of these 8-bit graphics. You have to avoid any collisions by moving left and right, as you can tell there. So you get the idea. Many of these classic kind of retro-style games you'll be able to find on here, and this is also kind of a version of Crossy Road in a sense, with more simplified graphics. A couple more strategy as well as puzzle type games can also be found as well before it loops all the way back around. So pretty simple mini games, but can still be fun if you're in a pinch. This one here is going to be called Lucky Wheel, so it's also just another variant, in my opinion, of the Magic 8-ball, but uses icons instead. You can ask a question, and then it will then eventually stop on one of the squares. Basically a more cute version of a fortune teller. Other basic utility functions, including a timer function here, might be a little bit more practical, as well as a countdown clock here as well. In addition to a scoreboard, so you can play back certain games and count the tally between two players up top and also on the bottom here. Some extra functions include a decibel meter that tells you how loud the environment is, as well as even a quick memo recorder that you can use to then play back using the larger speakers. So those are the simple tool functions that you have. And also, if we take a quick look here at the white noise samples, you can find some of those nature sounds, again, for unwinding or relaxing, duration that you want it to play in, as well as choose between the levels of different sound effects, including frogs versus the fan noise, for instance. Generating some of those white nature sounds, even the flame sound effect you can crank up, as well as create your own mix of various sounds. And the companion Divoom app is also quite familiar if you've seen our previous coverage of their other Ditto as well as Timescape products, but we can connect a device here via Bluetooth. Keep in mind that this model doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi. And from here, the main tab allows us to access functions including the brightness of the screen that we can also make dimmer versus brighter, turn the entire unit on or off, as well as go into specific modes, including white noise nature sounds. The same functions, in fact, that we saw on the screen of the Tiivoo can be also adjusted on the phone as well, including FM radio. And alarm might be a little bit easier to set up here if you want it to loop in certain days, and then sync it over to the Tiivoo here as well. Under design, this is where you're able to access other pixel art canvases that you've drawn on in the past, create your own animations, and then push them over to the display of the device, as you can tell there. And you can also change different colors, create different step sequences to create, again, animation patterns. So this serves as just a very quick example as we are kind of doodling over the canvas. You can see that then change in real time. From here, you're also able to access the photo album and then push over your own images to the device's built-in memory, as we touched on earlier, as well as the Pomodoro countdown timer you can also set up to show different types of animations in different tasks. For instance, when you're reading, it's going to show this type of icon versus when you're working, it might show a spinning icon. Also, when it comes to those mini games, you can also use your phone as a controller instead of relying on the D-pad of the Tiivoo, and this just becomes the screen instead. You can access the same mini games that we saw there from before, including, for instance, Pixel Snake, as well as some of those other titles up top, and then tap to confirm to begin the game. And then instead we're using the, again, phone to now play it from a little bit further away. So this one here is inspired by Battle Galactica, and you're able to, again, kill some of those enemy sprites or battleships by using your own plane. As for some more device settings, you can also change the default startup logo and the clock that it begins at. So just to serve as reference, if you don't like the style when it was showing some of the pixel animations, you can instead have the side show other status info, including a visualizer for sound, based on your preferences. So again, highly customizable. And aside from that, the next tab over allows you to show the current watch faces that you've downloaded on the device's built-in memory, and you can also tap to activate those, as well as check out more advanced settings for those, including for the aforementioned carousel loop of various animations. Again, this one here, you can refresh the animations based on popular ones, maybe once a month, by checking for updates, tapping here, and it will be then pushed over and synced onto the device's memory. And on the middle tab here, you'll be able to access creations from other members of Divoom. So some of these Christmas tree patterns, for instance, if you like, you can push over, as you can tell here, to the Tiivoo screen. It's actually pretty fast and responsive. Save your favorite examples as templates for you to then edit or slightly revise yourself. So it's pretty customizable, and you can find various creations up top categorized by different genres, including new, seasonal ones like New Year's and Christmas, as well as different emoji patterns, nature patterns, so on and so forth, that we have seen in the past, but the list continues to grow as more members push their creations over to the forum function here. So not bad. Let's also try a few other examples here, including this one from Pokemon, looking quite cute, Frozen Lake, and so you get the idea there. You can also find some other, again, creative inspirations, including gadget patterns on here as well, a tiny Game Boy, in addition to some icons can even be found. Here is a Snorlax from Pokemon icon that's getting generated. It's pretty exhaustive, and you can also search for specific keywords if you aren't able to find ones that you're liking up top. For instance, we can tap in something like Mario, and now it's resulted in all of these artwork that we see in front of us, including some of the classic icons within the game that other members have drawn and created themselves. So really not bad from a customization point of view. Now the next tab over is going to be the actual Q&A section. So if you have any questions that you want to ask other members to answer or Divoom, you can reach out in this section. So again, it is quite fun and creative. And for a Bluetooth connectivity, I have to say the overall connection has been quite stable as long as you're within the same room, 10 meters away from the device. Again, even accessing different widgets and sending them over still remains quite fast and responsive for the most part. And last but not least, if we tap on the More section, you can find a couple of other features on here, such as a notification control. So what that means is if you're continuously paired to your phone via Bluetooth, this can act as kind of like a smartwatch screen, where if you're getting a new text message or message from social media, it will then display an icon on the device to get your attention. But again, you can use it in the disconnected mode if you're only acting as an alarm or looping through the images that it's saved in its local memory. Again, like we've seen previously, there's even a pixel coloring mode as well, which is kind of fun. You can see how that was created pixel by pixel and the grid that you have to use to fill in the outer parameter. For instance, one here maybe on the outskirts of the tree, you can then color it in. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the Divoom Tiivoo-2. This continues on Divoom's legacy of pixel art as well as retro device-inspired products. So if you like the design here and you're okay with the slightly smaller screen size compared to the Ditto, I think this actually can be a nice option, still very cute. Again, adding that radio functionality that can be helpful when you are in an emergency, maybe disconnected from internet, and you still have a solid enough audio experience with the built-in speakers to enjoy some music, short videos with if you're paired to your mobile devices, adding a sprinkle of additional fun compared to most other Bluetooth speakers and radios that we've seen in the past. So you can check out more details if interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That has been the very cute and compact retro design Bluetooth speaker, the Divoom Tiivoo-2.